Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at Rock Island taking a look at a Korriphila HSP-701. This is, I can confidently say, one of the guns that we well within contention for the title of like best made semi-automatic pistol ever. This is a German, basically bespoke, single stack, hammer fired, roller delayed, which is very interesting, semi-auto pistol. And it is most typically compared with something like the Korth semi-auto pistols. These were designed by a German designer by the name of Edgar Budischowsky, and he started off his career in the early mid-1970s with, interestingly, a little 22 and 25 caliber pocket semi-auto pistol, which was also remarkably well made. Not quite like this, but really well made amongst other pocket 25s. If you compare it to something like a Raven or a Lorcan, it's just miles away from them, and on par with any of the really high quality pocket guns. However, he graduated from that into big boy pistols, and in the late 1970s started designing this guy. It was introduced onto the market in 1984 at a price of a whopping $2,000 in 1984. That equates to something like $5,000, give or take, now in 2020. So very expensive. They made both 4-inch and 5-inch barreled versions. We have a 5-inch version here, and most of these guns were made in .45 automatic, but you could get them in other calibers, and there were a decent number that had been made in 9mm parabellum, but you also had options like 7.65 Luger, .38 Super, and a few other kind of not quite custom calibers, but hipster calibers, shall we say. Now, what makes this really interesting to me is the locking system combined with the extremely high quality of manufacture. So let's go ahead and take a closer look and take it apart and see how it works inside. As I said, this is the 5-inch version of the pistol. The 4-inch has the slide shortened by an inch, so the profile looks a little bit different. This has the pretty basic standard layout of a typical semi-auto DASA pistol. So double action or cock the hammer and fire single action. There is no manual safety because it is double action. However, there is an interesting decocker that's sort of hidden here, where if you pull down the slide release here, that allows you, what you do is you cock the hammer, pull the slide release down, and then pull the hammer back just slightly. And there we go. And the hammer will go forward. And the firing pin block remains in place when you do that, so there's no danger of accidentally firing the pistol while you're trying to decock it. We have a frame-mounted magazine release right there. This holds 7 rounds of .45 auto. This is a .45 automatic version, which is the majority of production. One last little control here is a loaded chamber indicator. I will show you how that works in a moment. We have a pretty nice set of windage adjustable sights there. That is the sort of thing that you could get changed. Because these are largely custom built guns, I know there was at least a small number of them that were manufactured as single action only with fancier, more adjustable sights. Sorry. A quick look at the markings. This is the importer, International Gun Company out of Tucson, Arizona, and they're marked System Budischowsky. Serial number here is 810. There were a couple different batches of serial numbers. They did not actually make 800 of these over the years. As some, I think it was as some of the very minor design features changed, the serial numbers went to new sets of numbers to reflect the mechanical changes. So this is a relatively late production example. On this side, we have the name of the company that actually made it, which is Korriphila in Germany, and the model designation for these is HSP-701. The general handling is pretty nice. The slide is very smooth. The trigger is, there's a little bit of take up on the trigger there, but then it breaks crisp and not very heavily. So good trigger on it, as one would expect. The surface finish is very, very nice. This hasn't been fired much, if at all. It certainly hasn't been abused. Now, disassembly is done using these two little lever lug sort of features, which I have to say remind me of nothing so much as the Czech CZ52 pistols, which is probably not the association you necessarily want to make with something with an extremely high-end gun like this, but there it is. This has a fixed barrel, which contributes to its excellent accuracy. Now, to actually disassemble it, what we're going to do is pull these lugs down, and then you pull the slide all the way back, up, and off. So this actually disassembles just like a lot of blowback fixed barrel pistols. Makarov, for example, comes to mind. So pull this down. In this particular one, we have a plunger inside that will actually hold those lugs down for me, which is a big help. So I'm going to take this, pull it all the way to the back, and my lugs popped up. So this is a little tricky. This kind of takes 3 hands. So I'm going to open this all the way, pull this down, and then I can, no, not quite, pull that down. This comes back just a little farther, and then, no. There we go. All right, the slide is all the way back, and nope. You know, I disassembled this thing before we started filming, and it went really easily that time. So that comes down, slide comes back, there we go. And the slide lifts off the frame, nice and gently. There we go. So the slide is off. The recoil spring is attached to this little sleeve that we can pull off the barrel. So there's your recoil spring. The barrel is fixed directly to the frame, which is common for delayed blowback and simple blowback automatic pistols, and this is something that really generally contributes to good accuracy. The barrel doesn't have to lock up into the same position every time like in a Browning style gun because it never moves in the first place. And the next step for disassembly is to take the bolt out. This looks like an extractor or an extractor spring, but it's not. This is the bolt release. So what I need to do is push this in and then pull the bolt itself for the breech forward. So I push that in, and then I kind of have to, there you go. You want it to come all the way out like that. And then, there we go. The breech block slides out, just like that. Now this long pin is the loaded chamber indicator. So when you have a cartridge in the chamber, it's going to push this flat, which is going to push that loaded chamber indicator backwards, like not very much, just a little bit like that. So I'll show you that when we reassemble the pistol, what it looks like out the back of the slide. But in addition to that, we have our extractor up here, and then this is a safety device. So when the bolt is all the way in battery, this gets pushed back into the breech face because this round surface is going to run up against the face of the barrel here. That pushes this in, and that in turn allows this lever to pivot this direction, which allows the firing pin to go forward enough to fire. Basically, this ensures that the firing pin can only come forward if the bolt, or the breech, the slide, is all the way in battery. So that's an out of battery safety. Now the important working surfaces are right here. This is basically the locking shoulder of the gun. This is the equivalent of the angled locking wedge in an HK rifle. And then we have a round recess cut into the slide here, and that's where the roller can retreat to when the gun unlocks. So our one roller is right here at the back of the breech. When this gun is in battery, this roller gets pushed down where it locks into this rounded cutout in the frame. That locks the slide to the frame. And in order for anything to move, it locks the breech block to the frame. And in order for the slide to move, the slide has to separate itself from the breech block. And what happens is, when the slide tries to move backwards, the roller gets pushed down into this recess, and doing so accelerates the slide backwards while keeping the breech block locked in place. That delays opening. It reduces felt recoil, at least reasonably nicely, and it prevents the gun from opening before chamber pressure has dropped to a safe level. So it's a very clever system. Now with the breech block locked in, you can see the loaded chamber indicator there. When I push on the loaded chamber indicator like a cartridge would, that pin comes out just a little bit. So it's just enough that you can feel it at the back of the slide, and because that's a nice bright pin on a blued slide, you can also see it. So there's the HSP-701 all field stripped. It is really a beautiful pistol. It's extremely well made. It's quite accurate. It's extremely expensive, and it does raise the question of what's the purpose? And I think really the target market here are people who appreciate things that have a lot of effort and skill that go into them. In many ways, I would equate a gun like this or a gun like a Korth semi-auto to very high-end watches. They are, for some people, status symbols, but for other people, objects where you can truly appreciate the skill that was required to manufacture them. And that's an interesting niche of the handgun market. This is basically mechanical art in the form of a handgun. Production of these guns, last I read, has actually ended. Budischowsky is getting relatively aged these days and apparently is no longer interested in making more of the guns. At its height, production was something like 30 pistols per year. You know, they were very expensive and they were all handmade. And there just aren't more than a couple hundred out there. So it's been very cool to get a chance to take a look at this one and pull it apart and show you guys what it looks like inside. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.